And here we are again. Okay, in today's lesson we're going to be introducing A Doll's House by Ibsen. So this is the play that we will be interpreting for our group presentation, but before we can interpret it, we need to understand it and understand what the playwright was trying to achieve with it. So Ibsen was born in Norway in 1828, so 19th century, remember that. He married Susanne Thorsen and they had one son. So what is interesting about Ibsen is he had very radical views for his time. He believed that a husband and a wife could live as equals and they were free to become their own human beings. Quite radical. Critics attacked him for this, for failing to respect the institution of marriage. So Ibsen's writing tended to stir up sensitive social issues, and some corners of the Norwegian society frowned upon his work. So criticism caused Ibsen to move to Italy in 1864, and he spent 27 years living abroad in Italy and Germany. A Doll's House was written in prose. So prose, of course, there's no structure to it like we might see in a Shakespearean writing with rhythm and time. So it's widely considered a landmark of development because it is real. Just like our conversations have this sort of real flow to them, that's exactly what this was. So it was the birth of realism. His later work, Ibsen moved away from realistic drama to tackle questions of psychological and subconscious nature in a more symbolic way. And that might be a way that you choose to approach this. So these are some notes that you can take down. So pause and press play when you're ready. So what you can do now as well is just go to the link below. I'll include a link in the video where the British Library have put together a video that is about gender in the 19th century. So this is in England. We're looking at Norway, but some similarities there. As well as that, remember that we're talking about a very middle class type of female here. So in A Doll's House we have very middle class setup. So we're not looking lower class, but very middle class. So watch that now. So for us to understand the context of this play, we've got to understand the time. So prior to realism, the main forms of theatre that these people would have been used to seeing would be romanticism and melodrama, where the aim of that is entertainment to get a moral sense of satisfaction. So some key characteristics are that it presented a warped and rosy view of human existence, where the audience accepts through a major suspension of disbelief. You know, the hero never dies, the heroine will always be a sweet and innocent female, good always triumphs, even though there for a minute it looks like evil might win. So characteristics where we see this are that even though the audience understand that life isn't that simple, they accept it, they enjoy it, it helps them to feel good about the world. As most people want to believe a really romantic view of life. So you'll see here a couple of adaptations. You've got Dudley Do-Right on the right there, a comical version of Melodrama, but some real key points there as well, where you have the traditional sort of costume as well, and on the left you have the romanticism, where a lot of it was about the appearances. So if we understand that a little bit better, melodrama was the popular culture manifestation of romanticism. So romanticism was happening, then this drew out of it a little bit. It emphasised really clear moral tones and suspense. There was always a virtuous protagonist who was hounded by a villain and then rescued from seemingly insurmountable difficulties. All important events happened on stage, so this is the external events all happened on stage. There wasn't a great deal of characterisation rather than just events happening and we seeing people interact within those. There were huge spectacles, things like horses on treadmills. There were trains that were driven inside. There were fire shows, all sorts of real spectacles. That was one of the main things to come see theatre. And melodrama is probably the birth of Australian theatre as we know it as Western theatre in Australia. Typical plot devices included mistaken identity, There was abduction, there were strange coincidences and hidden documents where the world would always find a way for good to prevail. There was a servant or some sort of ally, companion who would support and could have some flaws, so would make some mistakes or be a little bit humorous because our hero could not have any flaws. Melodrama affirms poetic justice, that evil was punished and good was rewarded. Melodrama was hugely based around music, because melodrama means music drama. And so because of this, there was a music score that accompanied it and helped the audience to understand the emotional tone as well. It appealed to the wide variety of people, the mass market. And then along came realism. So realism was more just accurate portrayals of real life. Real life things we're going through, put that on a stage, don't ham it up, just present real life on stage and see what happens. It was a reaction against the overdone style of the romantics and melodrama, and it was written in that prose, that real conversational, just this is what it is. And the main point is it rejected artificiality. Ibsen began writing about the long buried problems that he saw in society, things like male hypocrisy, and for that to be presented to an audience who were used to the romanticism, the melodrama, this was confronting. The primary focus of the play is placed on interior motives of people. So rather than it being the exterior events where people just interact, this was actually inside someone's house, seeing them live their life and their decisions that they're making. You know, it was about their motives, their reactions and interactions with others. The inner psychological motivation was emphasized, and so you could really delve into that characterization. The external circumstances were there and couldn't really be controlled. Realistic dramas quickly gained popularity because everyday people could relate to it. Things that they didn't know other people were battling with, there they saw on stage, they could relate to it, and they could have some sort of therapy and way to process it. So if we look at A Doll's House, these are the main characters. We've got Nora, Torvald, Dr. Rank, Christine, Niels, who's Krogstad, the children, Anne-Marie, Helene, the porter. So the main ones in there are Nora, who is, of course, the wife, the mother of three, and she's living that ideal 19th century wife. You've got Torvald, the husband, who's a newly promoted bank manager, Dr. Rank, who is family friend. You've got Christine Lind, who's Nora's old school friend, Krogstad, who is an employee at the bank, and the others all sort of just blend in there. So some themes that we'll see throughout A Doll's House. As you can already guess, there's a lot in there about a woman wanting to break the social norms. She's questioning what it is that she's expected to do. And Ibsen dismissed that this play was a strictly feminist, women's rights play. He said, "I must disclaim the honour of having consciously worked for the women's rights movement. True enough, it is desirable enough to solve the woman problem, along with all the others, but that has not been the whole purpose. My task has been the description of humanity." You might consider this in your interpretation. His plays of his great period were all about humans struggling, breaking free from the shackles imposed on them by society. There was sacrifice that we see throughout A Doll's House. We see the idea of marriage and its place in society and people's roles within that. And we see appearances are very important. So with these things in mind, we need to try and understand A Doll's House, have a sort of contextual idea as we go to read it. Okay?